If you look at the animal kingdom, the grandmother is the one that ends up taking care of the entire pod. Don't mess with the animal kingdom, right?
I just see it through all the places we go.
Like, what do you assess as a matriarch?
I feel like that conversation's not out there.
Carl Jung, his idea of the mother was devouring mother, the ice queen, or the benevolent goddess.
Welcome to What I Meant to Say. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, founder of Be Better Media and a mom of 4, passionate about human connection. Throughout my journey, I have experienced many What I Meant to Say moments. But since life doesn't give us do-overs, I've created a space to reflect and tell our stories again, with a little more grace for ourselves and the hope that we can help others and be better for having listened.
And I am so excited to have Jeri Reeder on a What I Meant to Say conversation that I have been wanting to have for a very long time.
Oh, I love this.
About matriarchs.
Right.
It's something that just constantly, it runs through my day every day. I know it runs through yours.
Oh, yeah.
And like every dinner party I go to, I just see it through all the places we go, on the beach, at the yoga studio.
Right.
All in a place where we need to be taking care of each other.
Right.
How do we do that in the best ways that are good for us, that are good for other people, that are good for the men in our lives, that are good?
Absolutely.
Like, it's not just a female conversation.
No.
And I feel like, the world's getting polarized in so many ways.
Yeah.
I love trying to pull that back together and figure out how we all work from our strengths.
You're being so empathetic and so beautiful. You're like,
And I'm really how I
know.
and
It's
I
so
just feel like that conversation's not out there.
Well, just the topic of a matriarch is it's so individual. What do you assess as a matriarch? And if you think that, you think of, a tribal woman, or you think of a governmental woman, or somebody holding society together. And the word matriarch, in fact, is matra, which is the Latin term, and then the Greek term is archein, which is ruler. So it's the mother ruler. And they're like, well, do you have to be a mother to be a matriarch? And no, right? Absolutely not. So then there's the boundary and the barrier that breaks down right there, because you think of that. But I think the closest thing that I've kind of come to is that the fact that if you look at the animal kingdom, they're the bees is a matriarchal, the meerkats, lions, right? Right, and ants. But the most fascinating story is the killer whale. Oh. So that's a matriarchal pod. And they start with, the grandmother is the one that ends up taking care of the entire pod. And it's mostly the males that go to the outskirts, because they all have their own sound and noise, but they will make different sounds to other pods to kind of attract maybe the male of the killers to go out and to mate. But then the women come back, or the mothers and moms come back, and the grandmother gets to be about 80 years old, and she catches all the fish for them, the salmon. And so it's just the history of the grandmother being the matriarch is like, don't mess with the animal kingdom, right?
Yeah.
So if we could just follow, like, wow, okay, well, we know who's in charge, right? Especially in that scenario. But do we think of our grandmothers as our matriarchs? I mean, what were your grandmothers like?
Very strong.
Yeah.
Very strong.
Right.
And both in so different in so many ways, right? One was Dutch, 100% Dutch,
That sounds very,
very much like me. She was the one that I identified the most with. Like, I just felt this commonality, right. And yet I love the other one just as much.
Right.
But she was Swedish, and she was built like my mom. I'm built like my dad. So, one's 6 feet, one's 5 foot.
Right.
So we have all that. But they both had such a way of nurturing, but in such different ways.
Right.
I think, we breed that into our
Sure.
families, and we come in and we don't realize what we've pulled on as children. But I still have so many, like, now I realize at my age now that, like, the visions I have of my grandmother standing at the sink, and she talked to herself.
Right.
I talk to myself all the time. She's the one that told me it was a sign of intelligence.
Well,
and I remember just standing there listening, like, what's she saying? Because she was talking to herself, not me.
Right. Yeah.
But you were,
or her, all spirit guides. Or those really, like, yeah, she maybe not, at that time, we didn't know who she's talking to, but I'm sure she's reaching out.
She said, it's a sign of intelligence. You could get
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
So,
yeah, my grandmother, Dola, was, again, a real short lady, and the matriarchal of our family, because she was the ones that we are constantly reflecting on. And she was so nurturing. She'd send all these peanut butter cookies that she would make in a mail, but they would come all crumbled and all in pieces. But you're like, you couldn't wait to just take one of the pieces, and you knew it came from New Mexico. But she also drank a 6-pack of beer a day and played solitaire forever. And it's like, and she just would take over the space, and she didn't give rat's ass of what you thought of that, right? So she was just like, she grew up with Billy the Kid, literally. Her grandfather knew Billy the Kid, so she was a real tough lady.
Yeah.
And then my other grandma was the opposite, just really, ethereal and just floated around, and you're just like, whoa, you just like. So we have that in us. And what if somebody doesn't have that strong matriarchal something to pull on? And that's where in yoga, as well, that samskara. And so that's a tough one. If you had a really tough mother, or if you had a tough nun, as a teacher, or any of your female figures.
Yeah. And it gets into that, maybe a little bit of that shame-based culture. Or,
Absolutely.
Pulling on your fear rather than your love. And what are we choosing to focus on, and how can, that's something I think about with my kids all the time, is how can I help you focus more on love and abundance and dropping that fear and that shame, because we can't be ourselves when we're living in that
Absolutely. And that gets stored in our tissues. And that's why, I think being a matriarch to me it's an honor, and it's also a journey and a voyage. And as I'm getting to be the maiden mother crone, that's the high priestess wears the triple crown, the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And she is like the grandmother of the deck. So that is my true and honest feeling of what a true matriarch is that you arrive, and you arrive to a certain point of, well, it feels like there's a responsibility behind it. And as mothers, there's a lot of responsibility, and almost sometimes too much.
Yeah.
How do we?
I want to back up on that and say, okay, you arrive. What do you think the things that we as we're coming through that journey of arrival, because it's always, it's a progression, right?
Right.
What are some of those things that we have to come to terms with?
Well, it is about looking back at your parents, I think, looking back and saying, what can I change that I didn't get from my mother or father, because matriarch and patriarch, it's not a binary thing in a sense. I mean, we're all both parts of it.
So true.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
get into that.
Yeah. It's like we think of, the feminist approach, especially with, was it Bell Hooks, that beautiful woman that wrote so much about feminism. And she's like, it's not that they're men bashing or at all. It's the opposite. It's like we want our patriarchs to be as less fear-based, because that's what men have a tendency to do, or being brought up to be cut off from their emotions.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, and if that was the case, and your question is like, how do we kind of tap into that? And I think you're doing the work. I'm trying to do the work.
You're doing the work.
Well, thank you. I think that we all have to stay real clear-minded and stay grounded to say, is my trajectory the lineage I want to leave, or the history I want to leave? So that takes a lot of freaking work, right?
Like being honest with yourself about the things you need to work on, and then not coming at it, because I feel like I talk about this stuff a lot from a vulnerable point of view, but not coming at it like that's like somebody needs to come and help me, or it's like, this is just I'm having a realization, I'm going to share it with you. I do that with my kids a lot.
Nice.
And it's not shame-based. It's like, hey, this is what I'm working on. Hey, I struggled with this. I don't think I've said to my kids recently, we're talking about being a teenager, and I go, gosh, I don't think I liked myself from 13 to 17 hardly at all, right?
Well, they certainly don't like us.
Right.
And our teenagers don't like us at that age.
My son said, really? And he's like, I realized I'd never said that out loud before.
Wow.
And I go, sometimes it's like, we just have to be able to say the thing that doesn't seem like the thing we should say.
Right.
And it's like, no, that's the honest truth.
Right.
I didn't like myself then, or today I'm struggling. Like, sometimes I don't want to be on camera. Like, I'm scared.
Right.
Stuff like that. It's not that it doesn't mean I shouldn't do it. It doesn't mean, it's just, here's what I'm working with. Rather than like, this all looks perfect. I've got it all together. because nobody's got
No, and it's like what we're eating, what we're doing, how much we're consuming, how much social media we're consuming, and it's so overwhelming now today.
Yeah, that we didn't have to deal with, either your generation or mine,
No.
that these kids are dealing with, that we have to help them.
Right, because I remember, raising our kids, it was like, all the birthday parties that were just sort of cupcakes, and now it kept getting bigger and more out, and it was like next thing you needed a giraffe at your party to compete with the neighbors, and you're like, oh, well, I've got to.
Okay, I just had this conversation with so we had an au pair, and we had dinner the other night. Now she has her own kid.
Oh my goodness.
So she has me and Matthew, and then Teresa and her little guy have dinner, and she's from Czech. She was talking about traditions like birthday parties and Christmas, and the things as parents that we have to feel like we have to keep up with, and matriarchs often are the ones that are holding that up. Right. How much do you want to hold?
I want to let go of a lot of it.
Thank you. Do you know my joke when I went through my divorce? I told my kids that the elf on the shelf stayed with their dad. I was like, oh, do that.
And why even start it?
Right.
But you have to because
have the footprints.
And so then again, there's pressure on the mother. There's pressure on the women. But the best matriarchs, the ones that, your idols or whoever you think, like, again, you've got, these are all matriarchs in the tarot, the Empress, the Strength card, and even the moon is the feminine nature of, that's why we're so nurturing, why we care so much, is that we are the ebb and flow of this tide. Women, we cleanse ourselves every month. Yeah. But it's funny to think about what that even actually is, that this purification, and men didn't know what to do with that back in the day. Right. They were like,
even now we've come
go into another room. In India, you're sent to another room for 7 days, right? And so that's very patriarchal, but it's because they weren't, informed or knowledgeable. But,
and we have to learn how to all live together.
Yes.
And support each other through these.
Right. Exactly. And so then the word, I think in a lot of this tarot, they're the King of Swords can be a female. It's not that this is the Queen of Swords and she's a woman. It's that we want families to be raised by the sun and the moon, Yeah, we need that yang and we need that yin and we need that balance. And a lot of it gets out of balance because women are taking on too much.
It's so true. And we were texting the other day, and I'm going to bring this up now because I said I was taking care of injuries. And I told you I'd gotten a little behind, and you said you can only do one thing at a time. And it just dropped me in a text, and so I was like, she's absolutely right.
And that takes practice, and
a lot.
Yeah, so it seems like we're really talking about motherhood right now, and for me to be at the age of a crone, which I always thought crone was like, oh, I don't want a crone, but such a wise woman, the crone. It's the I'm honored to step into this role because my favorite thing is to study with young women and to work with young women with the tarot or the yoga or whatever modalities, because if we can just impart a little bit of what we learned along the way, then I feel that's our role. That's what a matriarch is. And that's what you're doing too. I mean, you're in the throes of it still. You still have like a lot going on as far as
but it is that's what I'm after, is that generational learning.
Yeah,
it's healing, but and I say generational learning, generational healing, and then so much of it is unlearning.
Well,
and that's what
is that your new book?
That's what I realize in so many things that I needed to back off. I needed to
it's beautiful,
not strive so hard and let it flow and just kind of sit. And you are so amazing at this.
I've gotten better. Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that. But it's the magician is the yang, and then this high priestess is the yin, and they're pretty much the same person. The fool goes into finding all of the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's the love. Yeah, I mean, it's just so rich and delicious to find out where we think we are on the hero's journey. And a matriarch doesn't have to be, again, an elder like myself, or it's like these young women, are they taking on too much of a matriarchal role? And that's what kind of circling back is that, you know, the magician is that son, and then the high priestess is the one that holds the Akashic records. She holds the records. So she doesn't speak very much. The moon doesn't really speak very much. What it does, it makes you feel a lot and feel. And so if we can just drop into that quiet space in between, because that's what it is, where we're having this loud noise and then this soft intuition, and are we trusting that silence in between?
And that is, I can see in this day and age how much harder that is going to be.
Oh my God, it makes me kind of off. And nothing turns off
unless you intentionally turn it off.
And therein lies how you can become a stronger matriarch, right?
And we have to model that stuff.
We do, yeah.
We're telling our kids to get off their phone
when we're scrolling. We think we're working on it, right?
Right.
You know, or whatever.
And I'm guilty. I mean, we're all guilty, and it is, you know, especially like even the entrepreneurial journey. I had to learn. I for a while there, I was feeling like I was always doing something that I should be doing something different.
Right.
And that's, I think, a mom in a mom's life, that can be, even if you're not running a business, like you can always feel like you should be somewhere else. And it's that concept of coming back to present, and what do we do to teach ourselves in this crazy world how to keep doing that?
Well, it comes back to, you can only do one thing at a time, really. I mean, technically our mind thinks we can multitask, but it's just, what's that next best thing? What's that next best breath? Where is that going to take you? Yeah. This is so good.
No. So for people that don't know, Jeri's an amazing tarot card reader. Can you tell people, just give us a little background on tarot?
I'd love to. It's a very ancient system, and the history of tarot is fascinating to me. But when you bring it to the present moment, it is a system of 22 majors. Then you have 40 minors, and then you've got 16 court cards. So it's a system. It's different than Oracle. Oracles have a whole different system. So the tarot has a very specific system that we learn. And then as soon as you put many years into it, you unlearn it. You want to erase everything that you've learned so that you can start to use your intuition. And otherwise, this is just ephemeral. It's a card with a picture on it, right? But what we really, over the years, and hopefully practicing this modality, is that we tap into some other sources, and we really tap into, we all have like 12 spirit guides around us at all times, and they're pretty sleepy. Those little guides are sleepy. And so we have to actually, again, do the practice, do the prayer, do the work, tap in, find the silence so that we can invite them in. And I had a reading yesterday with this gal, and those spirits were dancing with us. She was like, I feel them. I'm like, I do too, they're here. And they were involved in the reading. And, you know, my son would think, you are just crazy, Mom. You are a woo-woo witch, and you're just being weird. I'm like, so you don't believe in spirit guides, Jammer? And he's like, you know, I'm like, oh, who are you? Are you my son? I mean, deep down, I know he's really connected with Gaia and God, but at the same time, he just poo-poos all of this. And I'm like, oh, we'll see one day. But so the system, what you learn it and unlearn it, it's a modality for healing. It's a modality for health. And most people want to know about romance and jobs and work. And it's kind of, you know, the thing that people want to know, but it can really help you on a daily basis. It can help you on a yearly basis, or it's just a tool that I've been using for about 40 years. My mom introduced me to this art, and it's quite fascinating, and I just love it.
Came through your mom.
Yeah. Well, she was a matriarch in her own right, for sure. Definitely. A trailblazer, I would say, because she went to India and studied yoga with Kate Watabe Joyce, and who is the guru that brought Ashtanga yoga to America. And so she was doing the wheatgrass before wheatgrass was even a thing, you know, and that was like 45 years ago. So she's in heaven now, but she calls every day. Anybody that knows me calls every day at noon and says hi, because
I love that one.
Yeah,
I did your yoga class. It's been a little while, but
right. She would always go, and the class would say, "Hi, Mom."
Yeah.
And she was a wonderful matriarch in that sense, but she had all her flaws, as we all do.
Yeah. How did you come to terms with
our flaws?
Yeah.
I think that as you become a little bit more experienced, you know, again, just like today, it's like we kind of You know, I don't think we have flaws. I don't think there's a flaw. I think it's just an experience. And so to look at it like that, it's like, who has a flaw? I mean, everyone's doing their best, I suppose. And if you're not, then we need to get the help that, that is out there. Yeah. And it's through any modality. But the funny thing is like all the modalities that are healing, what's the percentage in there between male and female? 95% women are in there trying to heal themselves and fix themselves and to organize themselves.
Yeah.
95% of all classes that I've ever taught in 40 years have had mostly women, just women really doing the work. So congratulations, women, you're doing the work. We are all trying to do the work.
It's true. And how do we create a safer space to help men feel like they can join us?
Well, they're just as much a matriarch as we're all that light and dark. They're we need our please.
I say that. I do not want to do it all. I've said it on different shows. And I think when we're leading from our strengths, like I think that's where we want to be. I think that's where, most of these, when people are speaking out and saying this is feminist or this is patriarchal, like we're really, the essence of us working from our strengths is where we want to be.
Yeah.
And that having that, the masculine and feminine within us and developing both sides even within us, like I think that's not even talked about enough out there. People don't realize that we have...
Yeah, that we are
both natures in us.
Yeah, we need them all. We need it. There's an interesting tribe in China, the Moshu tribe, and it's one of the last standing matriarchal tribes where it's pretty fascinating the way they operate. And it's the women, and then they have what they call these marriage walks, where they just kind of meet their men, and maybe they might go and have a child, but that man keeps walking, and it works out pretty well for them. But they might be doing the hunting or the fishing or whatever it is that
bring something
to the table, right?
To the party.
But it takes all of us to have a peaceful place in the home, Yeah. And even though there might be a divorcee or widower, but it's still, they might have to take on more of a role. But
there's only so many. We do need each other.
Yes.
Like I was married for 20 years. Then I also have had, I love my roommate Carrie, who I met through an energy healing work group that I was working with. And she sent me an article from the USA Today that was talked about platonic partnerships. And they're on the rise.
Yeah.
And she said, this is us. And I said, you're absolutely right. Because we experience this thing as two women living together, nothing sexual.
Right.
Just two women living together. She would cook the dinner. I would do the dishes.
Oh.
And Matthew would walk the dogs after dinner. Like,
so maybe
just having that extra set of hands,
true.
That connection, somebody to have coffee with. Like, yes, the romantic thing is great, but there's something.
Oh, well, that's the
connected,
and that is that tribal. Why it works so well. Goddess groups are so abundant right now. Like women are just really wrapping themselves around each other and really supporting each other. So maybe we invite more of the men into our circles, and rather calling it a goddess circle and excluding. We're all wearing white, and you're not welcome. Or why can't they? Why can't they? Why don't we purposely invite them into our circles? I mean, because it's way more fun. Well, and there's probably a place for each one. There's a place for.
But how do we make those men feel
welcome?
Yeah,
just buy them a white shirt and white pants. Have them put a little.
If I told my 21-year-old son that,
I know my boy wouldn't.
This like your son.
No way. There's no way. And my husband too. He's like, he loves that I do this.
Okay.
And I think
that's huge.
Oh, he does. He's like. I think the more I do, the more he likes it, because he's like, "Ooh, at least we're grounded. At least there's the scale of the Lady Justice, and she's always working on that, balancing that scale." But yeah, I think some of us are fortunate to have maybe the goddess women that I know. It's so powerful right now, and I think that's needed. But again, maybe we start to invite the gentleman into our stories.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just uncovering this right now.
Well, and
Because I'm like, oh, that's so
part
interesting.
of the matriarch is like really nurturing every aspect of humanity.
Yeah.
It's not the old.
Why have we excluded our men? Oh no, you know. I mean, if you think about it, this is so
Well,
interesting.
do you do it out of protection? Do you do it because, there's a trust level? I mean, that
Right.
gets into, there's so many, and that goes back to some of that, generational healing stuff in the Samskaras and how
Right.
I would really like to kind of
Oh.
go back that way
Oh,
with this conversation
so good, so
and
true.
talk about like, what are the ways, so Samskaras there are stories that we are holding in our body.
Yeah, they're like,
In our generations past, in our consciousness, and we live in a way if we don't know that they're there. It's like that level of awareness, like building that level of awareness, knowing that story, and then how do we interact with that in a way that's loving and helps us evolve.
we're on to something. And this will be another podcast, but it's so interesting that my brain is ticking right now, is that we have excluded, in a sense, because it's so comforting to be in a woman's circle. It's so comforting. Yeah. But then when you get back to reality, in a sense, or back to, the society, where that's what it is. It's male and female having to interact with one another and sort of raise families or countries and continents and borders and boundaries. And how do we do that? But I think it comes from the individual. It has to be from the individual. And I'm like, wow, I'm so wrapped around the women that I read and the women that I do. And, maybe invite the men into the circle. Wow, this is an epiphany for me.
Yeah.
I feel like emotional about it, in a good way.
I know. I think because I truly believe that people are feeling lonely.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I have my days where I feel lonely and you want to feel that connection with.
Yeah.
And where are we putting up those boundaries?
Yeah.
Right?
And maybe we are unaware of it, right?
Yeah.
Wow, Wendy.
This is why
It's like a therapy thing. It's like I just like a big part of my heart just went, oh,
that makes me so happy.
any man that wants a free reading from me, you're welcome to come and sit and talk with me. Just seriously.
Let's do something in my backyard.
Yeah. What are you gonna have a men's circle?
Because I think it's scary.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah. But like, if you're not accustomed to intuition or the ethereal world, or like, it feels kind of scary to acknowledge that energy. And I think probably either we've been trained. I know I've always felt it. And so as I came into it, where I was like, oh, that's what that is. Because for a long time, I didn't know what energy. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to connect my mind, body, and spirit.
Right.
And I want my kids to learn that younger. And even though sometimes
They're following you though. They're watching you closely, and they're yeah.
But I think it's the way that we talk about this stuff, in our homes, and making it okay to question or be like, what do you mean?
Well, that's what I do.
We're crazy
with my son too. I'm like, well, tell me more. Tell me more of what it is that you don't. Well, why you think this might not be something you'd ever even be interested in. Yeah. He's a gamer and an artist, very, very talented artist. And, I purposely need to go in and see, like, let me hear what your music is. And it's fascinating. And it's like, who's hearing that, because he's somewhat of a recluse, but I guess having conversation.
Yeah.
Having conversation is the key.
So when you were raising, okay, how many kids do you have?
I have a girl and a boy.
A girl and a boy. And when you were raising them, do you feel like you raised them, like, do you do differently? I mean, I have 2 girls and 2 boys. So yes, you're dealing with different texts, but like, what do we put into them as matriarchs or do they come out that way?
It's really funny. And you're like, oh, boys like trains. You must like trains, but give them some trains. I think they just know that their mother was always a little witch. So I think that was, that's kind of how it always was. But don't know if I really raised them any differently. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd ask them though.
I know. Because I think I see a lot today talking to parents, and to me, kind of two routes, just to oversimplify here. But like, one, are we trying to lead them to be who we think they should be?
Oh, yeah.
Or two, are we sitting back and watching, putting up some, guideposts, but like watching and letting them show us who they want to be?
Well, if you think of Carl Jung, his idea of the mother was the devouring mother, the ice queen, or the benevolent goddess. That he thought all mothers fell into one of those categories. Interesting. I know.
He's not usually too far off.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's,
Interesting, right?
That's good. Lord, don't you want to gravitate towards that last one?
Yeah, that's what I was like. Well, tell me I was that one, But
we all have our moments, right?
yeah, and we're all probably little parts of all of them. But it's like, but then again, there's the Samskara. It's like, was your like this Queen of Swords? This mother will not stand and tolerate any bullshit.
Good.
And she doesn't have time for it.
Yeah.
It can be good, but at the same time, there's not very much creativity. That's all book work. It's all intelligent and all. She's a lawyer. Her kids are lawyers, doctors.
The tiger mom.
The tiger mom. Yes. And then there's the other mom who throws glitter in the shag carpet. That was me. The queen of mom. It's like, well, that'll be fun. Oh, look at that. I'm going to leave it there because it won't come out, and glittering gems on the floor. And so, I wish I was a little bit more like...
Because I heard boundaries. When you said, the reason I said good was I heard she's not putting up with
no
X, Y, or Z, depending on what those things are.
Right, yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean...
And here, I guess the Queen of Pentacles would be the benevolent. Maybe she's the benevolent goddess, just... working for the raising the children in the most humble, wholesome ways. But then the Queen of Cups is probably the martyr of the mothers, just like, yeah. So, I think we're all parts of all of them, but, we all learned from somewhere, and I think you had some pretty good parents, I have to say.
I have good parents.
I know, and I love that about you because you're such a wholesome, beautiful soul. You really are. You really are.
Right, but see... I come across certain people in life because I've said this before, it's taken me a long time to figure out who I am. And I think part of my journey in coaching is wanting to help people realize their potential and purpose younger in life than I did.
Right.
Right.
What a cause.
And it's wonderful. And that's why I love to get up and do it every day. It's great.
Right.
But I come across people that see something in me. And you were one of those people.
Oh.
I've lived here for 10 years. And I remember coming across you in yoga, and I felt that connection of like, you genuinely see people for who they are.
I do.
It's such a gift.
Do. I love it. And it's just...
And it helps people. Like, and I don't know if, we all have things we can work on.
Oh,
but you have this ability to show that to people in a loving way.
Oh.
And I think that's a very matriarchal gift.
Well, thank you. And I shall bow to that. And thank you very much for saying that. And I do love to, again, young women are my gems. It's like, oh gosh, and to give them the best, give them the best platform that they deserve. We all deserve that.
Yeah. And just learning how to like bring out those strengths. And I think in the end, like that's really what matriarchs, one of our highest callings is to like show everyone.
Show up and show them that it wasn't easy. Yeah. And but you will get to a point where the goal is to be as kind and honor yourself as well as your fellow human.
Yeah.
And it's not that difficult.
It's not, but at the same time, there's a part of us, maybe at certain ages, where we think we have to give more of ourselves.
Yeah.
And we can lose ourselves, right? That feeling of like, I woke up and I didn't remember who like young moms, you can lose yourself at different points.
Oh.
And learning how to come back to yourself and learn to keep learning about yourself because you know that's going to pay it forward. Right?
Right. Wow.
So.
What a journey we've been on today.
We could do this every week.
We could
look at our Instagram days because you really did help me get comfortable in front of the camera.
Well, I remember when you first started, I was like, dang, girl, you go. And now there's a 3-camera shoot where I get a studio, and it's really fun to see you go. And like I said, you're in the midst of a tunnel that you don't even know what's going to spit out at the other end, but it's going to be bigger than you can even realize. I know you're probably working on a second book, right?
Yeah, I'm always writing. Yeah, it's learning how to get this ADD brain to come together.
Oh, well, you've done a pretty good job.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Oh. Okay, I want people to, well, actually, I have 2 questions for you.
2 questions?
So I ask everybody that comes on my podcast, what's a piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Looking at it now, I would say to keep yourself physically, spiritually, and mentally as grounded as possible, because we can get on that toboggan sled of life and go way off and get lost. And so maybe keeping yourself at arm's length, as close to your God body as you can, so that you can one day realize that you're going to be the best matriarch you could possibly be.
That's beautiful. I love it.
Thank you.
Okay, and where can people find you?
Right at your doorstep, Wendy.
Yeah.
I'm going to be, coming over for coffee.
Well, card readings in my backyard.
Mother Tarot Reader on Instagram. I do little card readings on there, and then Jeri Reeder on Instagram, Jeri Reeder. But you know how to get a hold of me, and everyone knows how to get a hold of me. Yeah. But yeah, and again, any gentleman that wants a free reading, it's on there.
Heard it here. She just said free reading from men.
Yeah.
Let me get to that. And our Matriarch. I love it.
Yeah, I think because we want to invite them into our world and see that we are no different and we are not separate.
Yeah, we can all work together to be better. That's the whole deal.
That's what we're doing here.
I never realized how often I said that, and I don't mean that to be hard.
No,
it really is about relaxing into being the person that you're meant to be.
Well, thank you for allowing us to do this. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm Wendy Jones. This is What I Meant to Say here with Jeri Reeder, and thanks for joining us. We're here to remind you to be real, be you, and be better.
Thank you for joining us on What I Meant to Say, another production of Inspired Edutainment brought to you by Be Better Media.